Hey there guys, welcome back for another Indomitus painting video. This time I am painting the Plasmancer from obviously the Indomitus box set. You may have noticed that it's been a couple of weeks since I last uploaded an Indomitus painting video. Apologies for that. Last week was supposed to be the Judicia. Unfortunately, when it came around to editing, I realised that the camera angle that I'd decided for filming that video captured more of my head than the model itself, and so the video was unusable. I then obviously had to go through Paint and edit up this video. So unfortunately, no Judicia video, but we have this here Plasmancer video. I may try and pick up another model of the Judicia and repaint it whilst recording and get some better footage for a video on him at a later date, but for now it is what it is. Anyway, getting on with this model. As usual, I've gone ahead and primed this with a silver metallic spray and then given it an all over wash of Nuln oil, just to dull down that metallic silver a little bit and obviously shade in those recesses and gaps and stuff. So now I'm taking some Screaming Bell, and obviously I've thinned this down with some water. I've tried to include some of the palette here so you can see you know how I'm working. The colour staining you can see there is on the sponge that's underneath the palette paper, you know, the purple and blue little stains there. But yeah, so some Screaming Bell, thinned down to almost a glaze consistency, just a little bit thicker, and I'm starting at about 2/3 of the way up each segment. So obviously, you know, the bicep, the forearm, the hand and such, and bringing the brush down to where I want the paint deposited and the darker tone of the Screaming Bell. What this is doing is giving the that fade from the silver to the Screaming Bell with a bit of a gradient. I have sped up the entirety of this video to 2 times so I can try and get as much in as possible, that you can see pretty much the whole process. So I'll get on with this and we'll come back for the next step in just a bit. Okay, so next up I'm taking some Incubi Darkness, and again this has been thinned down to allow some of that silver to show through, giving a bit of a metallic look to the Incubi. And what I'm doing, again, applying this over the shoulder plates here, and what I'll do is let it dry between layers and start a little bit further back from the front with each successive layer. So essentially the front portion is going to be that metallic-y silver look, and it will become more opaque the further down the back of the back plate, the shoulder plates. So eventually it will be 100% Incubi Darkness, pretty much the bottom third of the plate. I'm now doing the head and his long chin piece here. I did consider maybe going with gold on the end of the chin, but I thought it might be a bit too much. As with a lot of my painting, it's the first time that I paint, you know, the majority of the models, obviously with exception to things like Necron Warriors and Intercessors and stuff like that. But these character type models, single pieces, obviously it's the first time I'm painting them. So I'm sort of, as I'm painting, I'm choosing or thinking about colour combinations, what areas would look right with certain colours. There may be times where I'll put it in and then decide I don't like it and, you know, have to undo it. But for the most part, I'm usually happy with the outcome. I don't edit things out when I'm doing these 2x speed videos, so you guys can see, you know, my mistakes and sort of my process on how I work these things. So for the Incubi Darkness, the areas that I go for on this are pretty much his head, and obviously his shoulder plates, plus the these little vial things at the top. And then on his staff, it's obviously the main sort of pole section of the staff that he's holding on to, and the sort of the T section below the crystal and the blade, and then the piece that joins onto the rock right at the bottom. The colour scheme that I'm trying to keep with my Necrons is sort of that silver to bronze look. With the Incubi Darkness, they're sort of the main two colours, and then throwing on gold for characters and stuff, and then obviously green for the glows and weapons. One of the sort of the bonuses to doing this glazing type technique as opposed to painting solid is, with it being a silver undercoat, it essentially gives a pre-made highlight, because the paint that I'm going over the top with is thinned down. Those sort of harsh edges, the corners and things like that, it doesn't tend to sort of grip to them, so it sort of flows into sort of the more level areas, and it gives it a natural metallic highlight, which I think works really well for this effect. If I was to go in with say some Sotek green or something, which I have done on some of the other models, it tends to look too opaque of a highlight for the metallic wash look of the Incubi, and I didn't think it works out quite as well. So aside from obviously being able to miss a step because the highlights are already there, it just gives a nicer look. Okay, so now for the gold areas. First of all, I'm taking some Balthazar gold, and obviously going over all of the sort of the tassel parts. I'm not sure what you would call them, but he's got these these 3 strips that come down from his shoulders, and then obviously the 2 down the front, and then he's got this large sort of ringed collar that goes around his neck and sort of pokes out above his head. So all I'm doing is I'm going to go for a more true metallic metal look for this, so essentially getting more of a realistic look with highlights and stuff, the same as you would with opaque you know, paints, non-metallic paints, except I'm doing it with metallic paints. So obviously for my main sort of mid-tone or a slightly darker tone for this is the Balthazar Gold. I'll then wash that down with some Reichlin Flesh Shade Gloss. I prefer the Flesh Shade as it has that slightly more reddish tone to it than Agrax Earthshade does, and it doesn't leave that stain that non-oil does. So now you'll note here that I didn't thin the paint with any water. This is because I've transferred all my Citadel paints into dropper bottles, and upon doing so, obviously I had to add a little bit of water to remove the excess paint from the Citadel pot. I'll post a link up in the corner here, up in the cards, to a video showing how I did that transfer. In case you guys are considering doing the same, you can have a look there. In all honesty, I find this better than the Games Workshop pots. You know, I'm glad that I did the transfer for those. I find that I'm using less paint than if I do with scooping it out with a brush. I'm essentially, 1 drop is the equivalent to a brush full of paint, which means I can do smaller, more controlled amounts each time. So almost done with the gold here. Obviously just trying to get a nice solid even coverage, and then I'll go in with the non-oil. Okay, so I said non-oil there. I was actually meant to say Reichlin Flesh Shade. In any case, I haven't done that at this point. Right now I'm applying some moot green to the sort of the vials on his back, as well as his eye, his sort of tube that follows the inside of his spine, and also the power coil just below his blade, above his hand there. I'm doing this with moot green rather than the Tesseract Glow that I like so much, just because I wanted a bit more of a solid opaque look to these, rather than that Tesseract Glow look. I think Tesseract Glow works well for orbs and things like that, but not so much for, or at least I didn't think it would work well for the vials. So I think here I'm using a size 1 brush, just to obviously carefully get in there, avoiding getting any paint into those little grooves and lines, as I'll apply wash into those later on. Okay, so moving on to the blade now. This video is going to show you a lot more detail on how I do my Necron blades. I know that in the Scorpec Lord video I did say that I would show you guys with the destroyers, the Scorpec destroyers, but I felt that this this blade makes a good example on how to do the Necron blades. Hopefully I do get it on camera here. Right, so essentially I'm giving everything a sort of a prime coat of white. The idea that I'm working on is I want to get an under painting of value, so going from white to black. I feel that this gives a better, cleaner, more vibrant look to the overall finish on the blade, going from that bright green to black. I think if I had done it just going directly from bright green to black over the silver may have interfered with some of that brighter green look. So going for the, you know, painting in an undertone first, just gives, you know, personally I feel a better result. So all I'm doing here is just making sure I get you know, a couple of layers of slightly thinned down white, get it nice and opaque, and then we can go in and wet blend the white into black. What I'll do, as it seems that some of the painting is off camera here, I'll just jump ahead for you guys to an area where the wet blending starts. Oh no, it looks like I may have caught the that I was off camera, so no, we will leave it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is thinning down the black. Unfortunately the palette is a little bit off to the side. What I've done is thin down the black with water, and got that on my brush, as you can see, about 50% of the way up the bristles. I then get a very small dot of unthinned, so neat white, just trying to show you there on the end of the bristles, and starting from about halfway, you can see I'm going backwards and forwards, you know, just left to right. And what this does is it starts to pull that white off the tip, and then it will pull that black, that watered down black, through the white, obviously making it more grey. And as the white becomes less and less on the tip, and you know, it's removed off and mixed in with that black, you're then left with pure black coming off the brush. So this is wet blending essentially. It's still a relatively new technique for me, but I do think that I get it fairly well with this piece. It does take a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of you know, going back over. It's a case of trying to get that dot of white the right size. Too much and it will take too long to blend into that black. As you can see here, by the time I reach the bottom, I'm pretty much grey. All I do with that is just a little bit more black on and then blend that. I do work fairly quickly with this. If I find that the blend isn't quite going how I want, I'll quickly rinse the brush off so that it's an almost clean brush, and then I'll just blend backwards and forwards over that area of that transition to try and get a more smoother blend. So you can see here, just thinning off, different backwards and forwards between the white and the black, a bit more black there to darken that bottom up, and it's, as far as I can see, you know, I hope you guys will agree, a fairly smooth transition. It doesn't have to be 100%, as obviously the green is going to go over the top of all this in a similar fashion, but it's just to get a good base down ready for that green to black transition over the top. Obviously I'll do this the same with the crystal. I find that the crystal was a lot more difficult to get that blend, especially on that top portion, as there's such a small area. It pretty much ends up 50-50 white and black rather than that smooth blend. You could do this the other way round with thin down white and then dipping into that black, but I find that that doesn't work nearly as well as having the thin down black on the majority of the brush and then going from white to black. It just feels like it gives a smoother transition. So like I said, the blending, it's not 100%, but it is just an undertone just to be able to get a nicer gradient when it comes to putting that green over the top, rather than having that metallic backing under there. So at this point, I would just like to thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you're enjoying the video and still watching. If you are, you know, I could like to take this point just a second for you to hit that like button, and if you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing to the channel. Obviously I am trying to grow the channel. I want to get more videos out to you guys. I'm really enjoying Necrons at the moment for 40k. They're not an army that I collected in the past. My previous armies, obviously I've always done Space Marines because they come with the starter sets. I don't tend to build up on them from the starter sets, but I do enjoy painting them. But my armies have always been Tyranids as a close combat army, and Tau for ranged. I started collecting Tau from the day they were first released and introduced by Games Workshop back at the beginning of 3rd edition, and now it's nice to switch to a new army. So future videos are going to be looking at some of the newer Necron stuff, especially towards the new year. And you know, I've got a few things planned for future videos on, you know, various armies and stuff, but for now I'm going to be focusing on obviously Dark Angels and Necrons, with the new codexes for those coming out recently. Okay, so now for the green overtone. To start with, I tried going with the sort of a glazing over the top of that green to black, but I felt that it just made that transition of the white to black a lot more prominent and didn't give the result that I wanted. Like I said earlier in the video, I've left this one you know, unedited, aside from speeding up to, you know, double speed, so that you guys can see my thought process and, you know, a bit of trial and error on it. So yeah, I wasn't overly happy with the way that I did this, so I decided to go back and do a similar wet blending as I did with the black. For the most part it did work, but like I say, that transition just didn't quite work for me. So I know that the way that I'm sort of recording and editing this video is a little different to what I would usually do. It would be great if you guys could let me know down in the comments what style of editing you prefer, whether you prefer these 2x speed showing the full process or the slightly more tutorial style that I've done in previous videos, where I'll explain a little bit and then cut to the next step. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you prefer, just to give me an idea of, you know, the type of videos or style of videos that I should do going forward. If you like a mix of the two, if it breaks up sort of the style of the channel a little bit, then obviously that's fine as well. Anyway, getting on with this now, you can see that once I got that glazing over the top, I'm now going in with the thin down green and a touch of the black. So this is a little bit opposite way round to the white and black. Obviously I had the thin down dark colour with the dot of light on the end of the brush. This way round with the green and the black, I'm using the thin down brighter colour, being the green, with that dot of black on the top. And then I'm same technique, backwards and forwards, working from where I want the darkest point, just shy of the darkest point. Obviously that will go full black, and then blending it down. What I'm doing here is going with the green over the top, and then quickly rinsing the brush off and blending that backwards and forwards. It's just a damp brush, so here we can see the neat green go over the top, blend it down, rinse the brush and blend it back in, essentially removing some of that paint and getting a nice transition there. So you can see where the water is in the bottle, where I'd thinned the paint down slightly to get it into the bottle. It does produce a few bubbles, but that's not too much of a problem. So opaque on the top, blend it down, rinse the brush or clean the brush off a little bit, and then blend it back up whilst the paint is still wet. This is all done obviously pretty much real time as you're seeing it, 2x speed, but you know, you can see how I'm going with it. I'm not allowing time for that to dry. I am applying it and then removing some of it. Here I'm just mixing the colours, the green and the black a little bit, and what this is essentially doing is creating that slightly darker green that I can use on that middle tone to again get that blend. And then obviously some pure black on the end there, and then blending that in with that green, and you can see again it blends up nicely. If you can keep your paints wet and work fast enough, you can essentially blend on the model without having to mix up, you know, various tones on the palette. And like I said, the crystal was probably the hardest part of this, purely for the fact that the area was so small, especially on that top portion. Trying to get a smooth blend there was pretty difficult. It could be cleaner, could be neater, but you know, I was happy with it. Obviously with the blade you can sort of see where I decided to have that sort of lighter area start, or the darker area start. It's just as that blade sort of cuts in and curves into itself. The reason I did that was that it's somewhere that I can then, on the flat black of the blade, I've got a starting point to work all the way around, that I know that it's going to be even on both sides of the blade, that the highlight will be the same. So here I'm going in with some moot green, and I'm now highlighting all those edges. So obviously using the side of the brush to pick off those sort of those angled edges, and then down the center of the blade, where you have that sort of that beveled lip, with a very steady hand supporting it all. I just follow down with a straight, straight line, following that curve down. I do get a little bit of a wobble, mainly because obviously I'm trying to do this with a camera between me and the model, but for the most part I think I nailed it. Okay, so for this model, as there weren't too many areas that I would do with the Tesseract Glow, I decided to try sort of more the style you would have done before GW released the Tesseract. So I'm now taking some Athonian camo shade and using this obviously to fill in those gaps between the vials, the thin line there, and then around the orb itself, just to add a bit of depth and shadow to it. So here I am taking the Reichland Flesh Shade Gloss, and as I said earlier, this is going to be for the gold areas. For the most part, the model himself is now finished, so I'm just adding this shade in for the true metallic metal effect. So obviously give this a once over coat, get it into those recesses, try not to let it pool up anywhere, and leave it to dry for about 10 minutes. Right, so once the wash has dried, I'm now taking some Retributor Armor and applying this to areas where I want sort of that brighter gold. So sort of the Balthazar gold is going to be those shadowed areas, and then the Retributor gold is going to be those sort of brighter areas. So with this piece, it's essentially the way that the pieces on the front sort of flow out. The bottom portions that you can see I'm painting here, pretty much the bottom 4.5 rectangles in this gold, as that's where the light will catch. And then as it becomes more vertical and slightly curves over itself as it joins onto his neck, obviously that would be in shadow and would be a slightly duller looking gold. With the back here, it's pretty much the reverse, because it sort of bows outwards from his shoulders. The light obviously coming from above is going to touch more at the top. It then curves inwards a little bit and then back out towards the bottom, so again the gold will be brighter towards the bottom. Essentially I'm just trying to think of how that light would reflect if this was a little bit more of a matte surface, and paint that way. So obviously you've got your highlights on the bits that bow out, or more parallel to the ground, even though they're still vertical, but if it bows away or curves under itself, then you're going to get some shadow where the light can't quite reach. Obviously that's in pretty much the extreme sort of inverted bends. For the most part you're going to get the gold almost all the way down. I will also use this Retributor Armor to add highlights, edge highlights to anywhere that is still the Balthazar gold, so that it you get some reflective surfaces. Some of those sharper edge highlights are still going to reflect some of that light within that darker gold. Okay, so with that gold done, I'm now taking some Auric Armor Gold and obviously just edge highlighting all of the Retributor Armor. This will give it another level of highlight. Essentially, when working with colours, you want to try and do sort of your 3 tones. So you've got your mid, or your main tone, your shadow tone, and your highlight. And then you could add a 4th for an extreme highlight, depending on the colour and sort of the area that it is in regards to where it can catch the light. You'll notice that I've also gone ahead and done the base on this. It was something that I did off camera. I've got a video coming up soon of various Necron bases and how to do them. So if you're interested in the how I did the base for this, then I do recommend subscribing and hitting that notification bell so that when new videos are uploaded, you'll get notifications. And obviously when I upload that video, which is coming within the next week or so, you'll get notifications for that, and so you can check out how I do the Necron base for this guy, as well as other variations on Necron themed bases. Okay, so now that the model is pretty much done, I'm now adding some weathering to the model. I've decided to do this on all of my Necrons, and for this I'm just taking some Stormhost silver and a piece of sponge gripped with some tweezers and dipping it into the paint, and then removing some of the excess on some paper towel. I'm just going around and adding some chipped effects to the various parts of the model. So this is obviously where the paint had worn away. Taking a size 1 brush and that same Stormhost silver, I'm now going in and very edge highlighting the sort of the extreme highlights, anywhere where you've got those sort of chips and scratches and things like that, edges of the arms, the armor, just anywhere for those where that light is going to catch the most and really reflect the light up. Alright, so this part I'm just taking some Typhus Corrosion and an old beaten brush, and I'm just applying this to a few areas just to give the impression of rust. Not too much focusing on the gold. Obviously gold doesn't rust as far as I'm aware, just more the joints and sort of those metallic areas. Once that dries, obviously with Typhus Corrosion it leaves a sort of a grainy texture to it. You could dry brush that is the recommended way. What I'm doing here is just a mixture of stippling and dry brushing with this beat up brush, just to get some of that rusted orange effect onto some of the metal areas, just to make them look like they've sort of worn down and started to corrode a little bit over time, that they've been in their big sleep. And once this is done, with that we are essentially done on the model. And so that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you like the look of the model. If you did, and if you do, hit that like button, and please consider hitting that subscription button or subscribe button so that you can get notifications on further uploads when you ding that little bell. And also it helps support the channel. The more the channel grows, the more confidence I gain, and the more likely I am to continue making videos. Not only that, but if I can hit that 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watched minutes, I become the channel becomes monetized, and any funds that the channel make in terms of monetization or donations, every penny gets put back into the channel, whether that's purchasing models that you guys request to see painted, buying better equipment for recording, cameras and setup stuff, and obviously paint supplies, buying products to review for you guys, not necessarily things that I would normally buy for myself, but if you guys wanted reviews on it, then I would happily spend any funds coming in from the channel on those products. Obviously I'm limited on how much of my own money I can put into the channel. I do put as much as I can, but with your guys' support I can do a lot more. So with that being said, thank you to everyone who has supported the channel so far. It is much appreciated, and like I said, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like, hit that subscribe, ding that bell, and until next time, keep painting those minis.